Hey BT fam, I want to investigate between the buried and me today. So join me on this little Photoshop journey. All right, here is the directly loaded teaser image from Between the Buried and Me's Instagram and Facebook, and I'm just putting it up here. And if you don't know the basics of it already, it's pretty obvious something is going to premiere relative to the band on the Liquid Metal station of Sirius XM Radio on June 24th at 9 a.m. Pacific time, and that's the Sumerian Records label logo. So that's the main bit of the information. Now, most people who see this think it's just a plain black background, or a couple people have already noticed with their naked eye that there's actually, interestingly, there's some stuff back there in the black background. And some really discerning people have noticed it's kind of like these two big bars that seem to make the 2 symbol, Roman numeral 2. So that's interesting. Let's take a closer look at that. So there's that. I'll probably want to give it some exposure, I guess. That should be good. And then maybe adjust the levels and squash the grays out to kind of bring them out. Okay, might be a bit much. Let's just leave it like that. All right, so you're already probably seeing, very obviously, that there's not only just the big italic Roman numeral 2 symbol, but that the dividing line between the date and time is also that same Roman numeral 2 italicized. So that's interesting. And then we also see that, and you're probably already able to get kind of what the photo behind it might be. We don't know if that's just a textural image that the designer put in there to add some texture. It's something designers do all the time, so doesn't mean there's any significance to it. But it is interesting because I think at passing glance, the designers would know this, most people will assume it's just kind of a black background or just a slightly textured background. So the fact that there's an image put in there is almost worth some consideration. We can kind of already see that it kind of looks like maybe like a power line with maybe a transformer here, maybe another power line or some other object there. And then these are very clearly some trees, some thin trees. And based on the needles here, we can assume they're a pine tree. I actually went ahead and, just to be ridiculous, I uploaded a sample of that to a plant ID thing, and although the algorithm or whatever is wondering if it's even, what's it trying to do? Okay, here we go. Wondering if it's even a plant because it's so modeled. It's 7.1% sure it's a pinus or pinoidea or whatever. So that's just a pine tree basically. So, but I want to take a step further and say like, well, what would this image look like without all the stuff in the way? So that's pretty simple. It's just time consuming. So I saved the selection. You just have to go like select each letter one at a time or whatever. So let me just do a shortcut because this is just a simple video and I don't want to edit this. So I will just load that selection if it's still in here. Yep. All right, so that's just loaded up this selection. We're gonna have a little bit of distortion, as you can see, outside of the bounds, but that's just from the low quality from the internet image. But yeah, so now we'll do a content-aware fill once I go to the actual source layer. And that will fill all of that selected area with, now I missed these little white spikes, so you'll see a couple little white dots, but whatever. So this emulates what the image would look like kind of algorithmically if we didn't have that stuff in the way. So I need to apply the image real quick to kind of run some black and white on it. Just to kind of like help smush out that extra color distortion. Okay, so that's the basic gist, but let's take it a step further. Now that we see this big number 2 image with what's pretty obviously a photographic background, let's see what happens without the bar. And again, we're just emulating what the photo would look like. It's not going to do a great job, but let's give it a shot. And then am I off the layer again? So it's going to do the same thing, and it's just going to do its best to estimate what it would look like without the black bars. In other words, I mean, it's basically like a mutant version of what would really be there in the photo, but you get the gist that it's pretty much a transformer, one of those cylindrical transformers at the top of a power line. Can't guarantee it's that, but it sure looks like it to me. And then there's some thin trees of the pine variety over there. So then that leads us to think, well, so normally we would just think, oh, cool, well, maybe there's a few assumptions. One is we have to assume that the graphic designer who put this together wanted to put that in there for some contextual reason, rather than to just have a little bit of extra stuff in the black background of the image. Totally could go either way. Doesn't mean it's significant. But usually graphic designers wouldn't put an extra photograph behind something unless it was kind of part of the branding of something like an album cycle from a band, for example. And it would just be extra work for something that almost no one would notice from viewing an image with the naked eye. I mean, you remember the source image. It was, you can literally just go back, and it does not look vivid at all. It's literally just, it looks like almost nothing behind the text. It looks like a plain black background. So we can assume that the graphic designer probably meant to add this photo to the image for a reason other than to just have it as texture in a very dim black background. Okay, and then from there, we can wonder, okay, well, what I meant to say is normally we would think that, okay, well, maybe the upcoming album, which we would assume is a standalone album, has something to do with imagery around like streets or suburbia or pine trees or power lines or whatever. But because of the fact that everything is involving two symbolism, or like symbolism with the number two, or at least the Roman numeral symbol for it, in two different places on the image where it wouldn't make sense to put such image normally, then we have to wonder, okay, well, is there a second version or iteration of any previous Between the Buried and Me stuff? And some people have already been speculating, oh, is this like Colors 2 because the text of the band logo is so colorful? Or is it like Great Misdirect 2 because there was trees on the cover of, like trees and power lines and suburban streets on the cover of the Great Misdirect album under some red, cloudy obfuscation stuff, orangish red stuff. So now we're thinking, okay, now it's smart to think, well, what other times, and I just already said it, but just to recap, what other times during any of Between the Buried and Me's album cycles have we seen any type of like street side imagery, like suburbia stuff, like power lines and trees? Well, only the Great Misdirect and Colors. And I don't think any of the other ones, I didn't go check, but I don't think there's any. Everything else is either space or Alaska or a stage with a piano. And we have seen zigzag diagonal, or sorry, not zigzag, but just diagonal lines before on the Silent Circus cover. But this looks more like a 2 or a pause button rather than the kind of barbershop diagonals of Silent Circus. And yeah, then everything else is either space. And then Automata definitely dealt with like a dude living and going in and out of houses and I think forests with yellow eyes and all that kind of stuff. So there's the possibility there too. But we already have confirmation from the band that they're not going to rehash Automata stuff or like add to it. And I seriously doubt if they were to be doing that they would call an album 2 of Automata, because Automata was already 2 things. So that'd be really weird to call it Automata 2 or something like that, because it would technically be Automata 3. I don't know. So that kind of rules out pretty much everything other than some type of like second iteration or sequel to The Great Misdirect, which is interesting because that's been kind of like this, the whole pandemic That was like the thing everybody was holding out for because it's what was put on pause. And then colors is the other one, where I don't know if everybody remembers, but I mean, you already have things like Ants of the Sky, and there was a lot of like lyrical content about daywalkers and like living their humdrum lives and everything. But there was that, especially there was that. Well, I mean, the cover itself has. I'm trying to remember now, actually. I'm actually not like too. I'm not like a super fan, but I'm just having fun. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, even the cover itself did indeed have like city streets. It was more big skyscrapers or whatever, but it was like lines running through city streets. Interesting. And then so there was also the colors. Uh, I don't know if it's like online anymore or whatever, but there was like a music video that ran with the whole album of colors, and it wasn't really a music video, but it was like a lot of interesting like old stock footage, and a lot of that had to do with like street level life. Like I can't remember all the examples, but like the White Walls one was somebody like putting up like an old slapstick film of somebody putting up a house that kept falling on him, and the Ants of the Sky portion was a lot of like airplane footage and a lot of stuff like that. So I don't remember all of it, but the point is it was very like old footage of real life places. So yeah, so the Great Misdirect and Colors both kind of have that going on, and this particular image has that. So that kind of wraps up my investigation. I'm not drawing any conclusions. It could just be a new song from a new album, but it's very interesting that there's all these two symbolism and imagery, and there's the pine trees in the sky and the power lines, and there is the many colors of the title, which has already been kind of debunked, but I can't help but think something is really peculiar here. So yeah, so hopefully this has helped just entertain people, or if there was something to kind of uncover before the big announcement or whatever is coming, maybe this helps us find it sooner. I don't know. I just like trying to find hidden meaning to stuff. Okay, I'm done. Okay, bye.